All right, so this is the conversation post movie for the Dead Poet Society.
All right,
Yes.
we got this.
She
Hey,
stole
what's your
my
shoe
paper.
size?
What?
What's your shoe size?
Like 11Y.
Okay, I'm men's size 9.
Okay.
We can't share shoes, unfortunately.
I would want to, because those are cool shoes.
I know, right? They are cool shoes.
Just like quick flex for everybody. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, did anyone have any sort of like points or questions that they want to bring up? Well, you and your fucking socks. Stop being an attention whore. For fuck's sake.
My socks! My socks!
They're better than yours. Those are better.
They're pretty cool.
Sorry.
You just want to cut me down.
You stole something from me. You know, retribution. You know what I mean? I'm big on vengeance. What can I say?
Oh.
So yeah. So any points, questions people want to bring up? Anything interesting come to mind when we watch the movie?
I did not expect Neil to die. That was a definite curveball. Usually in movies, there's like this whole happy ending thing, and especially in modern movies, you don't get anything that's genuinely dark. But well, except Batman. Batman is dark. But you know, you don't really get much that's genuinely isn't wrapped up in a nice, pretty, neat little bow at the end. But with Neil's suicide, I genuinely that genuinely shocked me.
I mean, they did try to kind of wrap it up in a bow at the end.
Right.
How so?
With the, like,
People standing,
oh,
right?
captain, my captains,
Yeah,
everyone's standing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they retained their sense of individuality and their confidence in themselves, that sort of thing. But yeah, you know, they have the suicide, like, you know, at least near the end, that sort of thing. It's I'm just saying, like, in terms of like significance, standing on the desk, someone killed themselves. Like, you know, I don't know. It's like there's a little bit of a bow there. No, but I think it is meaningful though, definitely, that like people still were able to defy the bureaucracy, the bureaucratic system itself, um, its system of you know, extreme regulation, and keep with them the lessons that they learned from their experiences with Dr. Keating. So definitely that sort of thing. But yeah, mixed ending, which is unique. Definitely, you don't find that in a lot of places you know, in today's society.
Yeah. And I wonder like how each of their lives would go. Like Neil was the only one that really met a big, like, he had an intention, like, I'm gonna try to follow my dreams, and then he had his parents, give him the standard pushback for this, like the scene that they're setting. But like, what if any of those other young men had the same, like, trying to do something they want to do? Would they have received the same pushback? Would they have died? Would they have run away? Like that whole conversation Neil had with his dad was pretty intense, but also like there's like not an insanely correct answer for like what to say to your parents in that situation. And I wonder like what any of the other boys' outcome would be.
Yeah, I believe it. I could be wrong about this, but I believe that the part of the narrative that we find that those sorts of like the after point, you know, the stories like how they like grew up and stuff like that, like Stand by Me. It's like a great example of that. You guys have seen that movie, Stand by Me? No. Wow. All right, that's
Put that on the list.
Yeah, no, it's a good movie. Definitely, it's about this like these group of boys, and they find a dead body. It's like this whole story about that's classic. Anyways, though, but I believe it's called The Epilogue. I believe that's what it's called. But yeah, I mean, like, as far as like their you know, their goals, the greater you know, ideals, whichever have you. I think like really the only one to speak of was one of them was just trying to get some pussy.
I know, I know, and it's
Yeah,
like
it's got a slap a
it's
love
like
story in there.
the only it felt like the only reason they wanted girls in the school, like not because of any grand statement of gender equality, but because they all just wanted pussy.
Boys. No, and I love that sort of part. We were laughing about Nwanda. Of course, I remember that name. When they were like in the cave, and we saw like this was early between you and I that you guys didn't see. But they were in the cave, and they had like the two girls in the cave with them.
Yeah.
You guys, remember that scene. And Nwanda's being like all fucking cringy and stupid, being like, "Yeah, let me give this like some real cool poetry over to them, and woo them and shit." We were just like laughing at that. It's like fucking Nwanda. It's just like goddamn, very very base sort of guy, but respectable in some certain senses. You know what I mean? Very much an individual.
Knox kind of goes on that same train.
Yeah, being a really young boy, love struck and shit like that. Yeah. I would want to give Knox a little more credit to his character. But yeah, definitely getting wrapped up in that whole like all. It's funny that was one of the beginning scenes, full of hormones. Dr. Keating was saying that to the boys as they were standing in front of all the pictures of like the
Oh,
ones
yeah.
who were like are now fertilizer for dandelions. You know, so yeah, it's sort of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, besides that though, God, who I mean, because again, they were all destined for being engineers or lawyers or doctors. Like we didn't ever really get into any other ones, particular artistic, or iconoclastic, maverick sort of ventures and ideals. Um, just as
This is slightly off topic, but something that I'm very grateful for in terms of how my mom has parented me is that my mom has always been very accepting and very even encouraging of my artistic inclinations, even to a degree that most people would probably consider a bit ridiculous. Um, but I've always been very grateful that my mom has always like encouraged my forays into the arts.
nice.
And my mom has always been very nice about that. And just like I sometimes I take that for granted, but just like watching the parents in the movie, especially Neil's father, I genuinely forget sometimes that there are some parents who genuinely have a problem with their kids being into the arts. Um,
Yeah.
so
For
you
the
know,
older generations, I think.
it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I think you see a lot more of that with older generations. I remember seeing this this I suppose it was a meme. It wasn't so jokey, happy go lucky sort of thing. But what they were looking at though was like this really like old person with like a cane and shit like that, and they were like speaking to this other person in front of them who's like this like middle aged mother or something like that, and they're saying like you're stupid and you don't mean anything, things like that. And then the mother is speaking to the younger, adult, saying like the same sort of things, like you're without value or some shit. And then the person at the end has like this barrier around them and sees the greater truth of saying like I recognize these sorts of harms and I will overcome our generational trauma, that sort of thing, because that is definitely real, and that's very pervasive in our society. So those sorts of attitudes about like you cannot go into these things that give your life like enjoyment. Like you just have to do the most financially successful thing you can do, because the Great Depression wasn't that long ago and it fucked up a lot of people, and World War II fucked up a lot of families and shit. So
What I think is funny, which Ivy League uses carpe diem as their phrase? Like they all have like Latin phrases.
Right, yeah, no, I know that, yeah.
And I think what's funny is that, like, for example, Rochester had Meliora, which I can't remember what that meant. Like all these random like inspirational Latin phrases.
Sure.
And I think what's funny is that like the Dead Poet Society was using like carpe diem as like their slogan, like seize the day, but they were all like supposedly heading for Ivy Leagues that also use those like Latin phrases.
Yeah.
Like for their schools, and it's like
the irony there, yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely, yeah. I would think that the point about it though is that they use it in a superficial sense, those Ivy League schools. So when they say carpe diem, they don't really mean that, or memento
Yeah.
mori or something like that. Remember that you will die, all those sorts of things. Like they may say that as like a front of like we really promote like you doing good stuff and being like look Latin and you know what I mean, like, but they're not really there with it. Versus like how Keating used it. He really meant that shit, but also, of course, still even then, a limitation of like don't choke on the bone. You were saying what was it, Meliori?
Meliora,
Meliori.
Melira. No, ORA. Meliora.
It's a truncated Harry Potter spell.
I know. Really. Better. It just means better.
Oh.
All right.
Better.
I know.
Then-
Yeah, that connects to the word ameliorate. That's funny. Anyways, connections. Words. The English language. There's over a million. Yeah, there's over a million words in the English language, and most of them are synonyms. It's the stupidest fucking thing. I hate that. But it's cool at the same time though, because you do pick up on a lot of nuances with words. But then at the same time, we also have this stupid bullshit about like I before E except after C. But then you have like beige and slay and shit, and a bunch of other ones.
So English is great for writers because of all the nuances.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a really hard language to learn though.
Yeah,
Just
that's what I was
yeah.
gonna say.
Yeah, it's bullshit though.
Yeah, because of that reasoning.
Supposedly Polish is a really hard language to learn because Polish has 9 tenses.
Nine
Oh, that's
what?
cool.
9
That's
tenses.
crazy.
Oh, sure.
Like in English we have past, present, future,
Yeah, they got
and
nine.
they have 9 tenses. So
Jesus. That's crazy. That's like seeing different colors.
I
What the fuck am I
know.
looking at right now? That's fucked.
Oh,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ. Anyone else have any points to bring up? I try to mix it.
Has anyone like had experiences either with like other people or themselves with people like Neil's father?
I know. I was actually telling Jacob about this before you guys arrived. But I used to have a friend named Neil, and after my second psychotic episode, he started really digging into me that I should really get into computers. Because we had a mutual friend named Lynn, who is, by all means, a very successful woman. Like, she works for AAA, she works with computers, she makes enough money to support her and her husband so that her husband doesn't have to work and can basically stay home and take care of the house. And, by all means, financially, Lynn is a very successful woman, and she's a good woman. And, I think that Neil wanted me to be more like her. And so when I wouldn't go into computers, he was tolerant of that for a while, but we got in an argument over something else, and he wound up getting very angry. And that was when I pretty much blocked him out of my life. But I imagine that he would be a bit like Neil's father, which is ironic because his name is Neil. So, Neil is like Neil's father in that way because he wanted me to go into a field that I didn't really have passion for just so I could be financially successful.
Yeah. Strange sort of boundaries to be pushing as a friend, right?
Yeah, it is, and that's why I told you that he had poor boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. Good example. Anyone else? What sort of trauma do you have?
I feel like compared to the people in this movie that my parents were total hippies and they kind of just like
Nice.
it was kind of the opposite, like didn't give me so much structured guidance as far as like they just kind of said that you should like kind of stick with and do a good job at whatever you do, but not necessarily pushing me in a direction. And so I found that gave me like a bit of a confusion having so many influences, kind of like, well, what, because it the opposite like requires so much independence of thought and sureness like in yourself. Because I think I bounced around a lot prior to like deciding what I want to do, and maybe it's because I didn't have like a push in one direction growing up.
That's
So-
what Neil thought that I was. Neil thought I was like you.
Okay, kind of like not sure.
Exactly, not
Such a
sure.
subtle fucking insult.
Neil thought I was terrible like Sorry, I did not mean to imply
No,
that.
I know.
I did not mean to imply that you were
I know.
terrible at all.
No.
I'm just saying.
I know, just joking. Yeah, so I guess I guess I understand that it from like friends and family that I've had that it would be really hard to stand because you're in such a situation when you're that young. Like, what do you say? Like, screw you, I'm gonna go do my own thing, and I'm gonna not take your money. I'm gonna leave the house. Do you like completely isolate yourself, or do you say like, okay, until I'm 18, I'm gonna do what you say, and then you backpedal? Plus, like, parents might hold things over your head, like, oh, I paid for your boarding school, now you have to go to Harvard, even though you're an adult and you're out of the house, but you still owe me. Like, it's really like hard to like.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very black and white situation in this case for Neil. So it's a little. I still like ever since I watched that movie, I was like, crap, what would I do? I don't really know because I've never had parents like that or influences like that. So
Yeah.
it's hard. I'm sure people in the similar sphere of influence might understand more, but
That's totally fair.
yeah.
I've heard that sort of sentiment a lot before, that people who grow up with these extremely liberal parents find themselves, as they're growing up, that they have such an extreme lack of structure that it actually hurt them to a detriment because they were lost. You know what I mean? But so I wonder then, to ask you, like, what sort of structure maybe that you think that you like would have wanted to have, or do you think like there should be? Because it's an interesting sort of like question about, like, if you are given a structure to follow, does that mean that it's taking away from yourself because now you're being programmed, sort of thing?
Yeah.
Or is it sort of like necessary on some level? Is it like you just gotta, what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I do like personally, my personal opinion is that you should like. I think the more liberal like parents that want to encourage like a diversity and thinking from their children, they should at the very least instill a sort of like line of questioning in their kids. Like, they should be like teaching their kids to have their own thought process in which they ask themselves, what do I genuinely want? Why do I genuinely want this? Like for the parents to instill their kids to be able to ask why and do a
Self-reflection.
semi-methodological process of defining why you're choosing to do something, not pushing them like be a doctor, but pushing them to say whatever you do, you better be able to justify it really well, because then like you're going to be so sure that you're gonna enjoy what you're doing with your life that you're gonna stick to it, rather than like not thinking about it for more than a couple minutes and then you bounce around and then the environment tells you that you like it or don't like it rather than you really thinking hard about it yourself. I'm sure I could word that more concisely, but it's just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Why? I feel like 3, 4, 5 years old, they already do that a lot. Yeah, and that's sort of thing. Like if you're gonna be like, I really want you to ask more of those questions. Like, what do you think the response is gonna be? Like, why?
Why?
All of a sudden, like, fuck, it backfired.
Everyone thinks the world is just completely absurd when they're 5 or 6.
Oh yeah,
Get it?
right.
But just forget about that later.
The true existentialists.
Right.
These
This
kids.
5-year-old
Yeah.
in the room being like, yeah, but like, why? You're like, oh fuck, man, that's so
don't
fucking deep
either.
shit. Oh man, only in philosophy. Um, yeah, no, I mean, I would think that like that definitely would be valuable. I think, and also like if your whole point is to like have that sort of like serious freedom, and even then like this sort of idea of what to do, is still going to incur a lot of structure making and biases that are constructed for the child because of just simply what they're exposed to. But nonetheless, the idea of would-be itself that I'm talking about here now is to get them to have a push, but into everything. Just keep doing shit over and over
Yeah.
again, seeing what sticks, and then go with it. All
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Instead of just be like, all right, completely hands off. All right, have fun.
It's interesting because like
Totally.
religiously, I just, this is so weird that I just remembered this, but going back to what you were saying about how when you were younger you were given like a complete lack of structure. That's what my religious life was like up until maybe, I don't know, 16 maybe. Like my religious life was like that. So I grew up Unitarian Universalist, and even though like pretty much all parents handle religion differently in our faith, my mom handled religion like she encouraged me to ask the questions, but she also didn't really give me any set answers. Like she encouraged me to kind of figure out things for myself. And the result of this was that when I was much younger, I pretty much latched onto Buddhism for quite a long time.
Cool.
And I was pretty much a hardcore, not formally Buddhist, but I did follow a lot of the practices and a lot of like the precepts and stuff. Like I meditated and everything. And so I did that up until, I don't know, maybe until I was like 20 or something. So that's not like my whole life, but that's a pretty good chunk of my life.
How old are you?
I don't know. I think when I discovered Buddhism, I was in like 3rd grade.
No. I mean, like, how old are you right now?
27.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I
I
discovered Buddhism in like 2nd grade, and I kept practicing Buddhism until I think I was like maybe early 20s. But basically what happened was that since I wasn't really given a structure, I just kind of floundered around until I found a structure that I felt was right for me,
Yeah.
and I latched onto that.
Totally.
Interesting. All the way back in like
Yeah.
2nd grade. Were you gonna say something, Angel?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of a different experience.
With Buddhism?
No, with like parenting, with parenting styles. So my parents like threw us, all 3 of us kids, like into a bunch of stuff like sports. They were like, we want you to find what you want, so we're gonna like put you in all of these things and you're gonna find what you want. But they were also kind of on the side of like, this is what came up when we were watching the movie. I like paused the movie right after like Neil's dad was talking to Neil, and I was like, how would you respond to that? And Patrick's first response was like,
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. My parents weren't like that.
Your inclination was to be like, I would stand up like for myself.
like screw you, I'll do it, and I'll leave,
Yeah.
I'll get a job, I'll live on my own, and I'll do it.
Yeah, that was like his first response, and I was like, well, imagine like what it's like if you grew up like under someone that like gets angry really easily, and then that like anger is like front and center, like as a kid or as you grow up, to like respond the way they want you to respond. Like you're conditioned from the beginning to respond submissively to that line of questioning. Then like what would your response be when he's standing there and being like, what do you mean, like what do you want to tell me, what is it that you want to tell me?
And it goes on to exactly invalidate him, saying like,
Yeah.
what is it about this acting business, because you can forget about that, and it's like,
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh,
even speak
God.
yet.
But like,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
your whole life, you're used to just saying nothing. I'm sorry, that was a mistake to speak out.
Yeah,
Like your
it's
whole
trauma.
entire life, 20 years, and then
Yep.
like all of a sudden you like actually have something you want to do.
What is
Yeah.
your
Does
trauma?
that push you to like say like stand like feel like you'd be less inclined to stand up at
Yeah,
that point?
and
Yeah.
You invalidate yourself. Maybe.
Definitely.
the thing that
Yeah.
happened with my parents is that my parents were really good about getting us to think for ourselves, and they would prompt us with like really investigative questions.
Nice.
Like when my dad was in a non-frustrated, not angry mood, but like I like grew up with those like moods where like dad was frustrated, dad was stressed out, like then you just act like that, you know. And like that like resonated a lot, I guess, with me. Like I know
Yeah, been
feels
there.
like
Been there, done that.
not like the pressure of like you have to go to med school or you have to do this with your future, but like if you want to counter what I'm saying, like there's gonna be a lot of follow-up of anger with this.
Yeah. So
And it's something you just like know.
I have an aunt that used to have a temper. I kind of know what you mean.
Yeah.
so does that mean that his dad killed him? In a sense.
What?
Is that too
that
intense?
His
Is
dad
that too,
killed
is that too
him.
intense of
Neil's
a
dad.
question? You know. Like,
No, it's not too
If
intense
he-
of a question at
if he
all.
was
I
raised
actually
like that.
agree.
if he was raised like that, conditioned like that, did he have a choice to kill himself? Like, I guess he could have chosen to be interested in something in line with his parents, but that's my philosophy plug.
Hey.
Did he choose to kill himself? Or did his dad kill him?
And then
Why are you
I just don't know what I'm talking about with philosophy, so I want to pose that. And
Well,
see
it's
if I
also
get
a
an easy
psychological
answer.
question because suicide is considered a psychological thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, suicide is considered a symptom of mental illness.
Mhm.
So, you know, in a way, like you're not choosing to commit suicide anymore. You're choosing to have like a cough or a stuffy nose or a flu.
I'm just curious, have we gone into a conversation about free will or anything like that?
Yeah, we have.
We did?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that everything that, you know, we are is of the same matter of a sneeze, or at least the impulse, the urge to have a sneeze. And of course, what we do, what we sneeze, or we try to stifle it, but then there's another urge going on there to stifle it, and that's the one that like, you know, shows itself. The weird sort of question though becomes though is that if we are gonna say that like Neil's father was the one who pushed him to suicide and is ultimately then like that cause, right, that he was the one who killed his son, knowing that generational trauma is like a thing, do we then extend it to like, well, what about like the father of Neil's father?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or like on the flip side, like would Neil have killed himself if he had never been exposed to like the alternative of what Neil's father wanted?
Like by the teacher, or just in general by the school? Because the school is the one that put. Well, do you think he would have still seen that poster even if the teacher didn't say, "Yeah, go do it"? He would have seen the poster.
Yeah,
And, like,
but I think
thought
like the
about it.
encouragement. I cannot remember the teacher's name.
Mr. Keating,
Mr. Keating, yes.
Dr. Keating, he also has a PhD. He taught at the University of Sweden.
Yeah, so like he was like providing the counter opinion, I guess, to his father, and like created the mental conflict that I think like drove him to that.
So here's an interesting sort of question: is that with Dr. Keating's like you know, encouragement, do we see that Neil had his passion like enhanced by Dr. Keating, or was it unleashed by Dr. Keating?
I think it was allowed. Like,
Enhanced.
yeah, I think it was
It was
like
enhanced.
allowed
Yeah,
to
that's interesting.
flourish.
He was allowed to flourish. So you're more of the opinion that it was already there, that passion was already inside him, and it was more like Dr. Keating was trying to like help open up that door. It was just kind of stuck,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden became flooding out, that sort of thing. But you're saying it was
Yeah.
enhanced, and so like it wasn't there. The intensity was not there, and Dr. Keating was like adding
Well,
to like flame to the.
What she said.
Oh, okay.
What she said.
Then who do you guys think would be more
Culpable?
responsible for his death? The person who encouraged the passion or the person who stopped the passion?
The person who stopped it.
Definitely.
Here's the question though: is that the reason for why we would come to that sort of conclusion? Is that ultimately just like a bias of ours because we don't like the fact that he was
It's a bias of
stopped?
mine, and here's
Yeah.
why. When I was very young, I read a book called The Teenage Liberation Handbook. And the Teenage Liberation Handbook was basically a book about something called unschooling,
And
which
making
is
bombs too.
a relaxed form of homeschooling. And I was so passionate about it that when I asked my mom if I could put it into practice and my mom said no, I became extremely depressed for a while. So much so that I needed psychological counseling. And so I wouldn't blame the person who wrote the book. And I wouldn't really, I guess like I became really depressed because like I really feel that it wasn't the person who wrote the book's fault. And using the same logic that I wouldn't say that it's Mr. Keating's fault either, because it's Mr. Keating playing the role of the person who wrote the book.
But
It's just that person, stoking the fire.
But the person who is like, so Neil's dad is talking to Neil, thinking that that is what is in the best interest of Neil. Like I think there's obviously don't underestimate teenagers, but don't overestimate teenagers on decision making. And I think that this is a bad example considering it's just a play and acting. But I think like as far as like parenting goes, I don't know if it's like a great path to go down of like, I want to pursue this like on this whim, and the parent is like, that's not a good idea, like don't go that way. Like
Think you're gonna make any money acting like that route?
So well, and you got into a pretty good fucking film, so obviously some money, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like something good that comes out of like kids being told no by their parents. Not all the time, but at least like sometimes.
Well, I think like on issues of passion, like if your kid is really passionate about something like painting or music or acting, or even I know somebody who's really, really, really passionate about computers and math and engineering and all the STEM stuff. So, or even if they're passionate about a particular mode of education, like Montessori, you should definitely say yes to your kids on that. If they want to smoke meth, you should definitely say no.
But Mom, it's a passion of mine. It's not a phase, Mom.
Then you should say no. But it depends.
I'm imagining a nice middle ground where you say, okay.
To like the meth?
Okay, once, but then you have to stop.
I'm imagining an alternative where you say like, well, I'm your authority figure until you're 18, so you have to agree that if you want to do acting, then you have to get the best grades you can and finish your degree, and that's what you have to do under my roof. Like setting him up to be a doctor without telling him he has to be a doctor, just in case he changes his mind again. I feel like that'd be a good middle ground.
Also, you have to make sure it's not a whim, because like my mom being supportive of like my musical inclinations, for example, like I've been doing music in church for like years and years and years and years. So it's not something that's just, like that. And like my writing, I've been doing my writing for years and years and years and years. So it's not something that's just gonna go like that.
Yeah.
So like
It really wasn't a phase.
you do have to make sure it's not a phase.
Yeah.
Totally.
And there's definitely ways to do that. Like I think as a parent.
It's not like that kid is like scribing on the weekends or anything. Like he's not gonna be a doctor anytime soon. Try things out,
Yeah. He's still really young.
But just at least, I guess you can't fail out of like failing your classes and going to acting are like not the same thing. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You can still go to Harvard, but like
Probably have better
Ah.
chances getting into Harvard.
with a
You
more
know,
diverse like background.
Actually, the
Yeah.
minister of my mother's church is an actor.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
Like he does ministry as his day job, and then on the weekends he'll go and act in the theaters and stuff, and he's really good at it. Like he's a really, really talented actor.
Yeah, the two bleed over each other. Right?
The president.
I mean, I wasn't even trying to slam religion. I mean, I could have. I was pulling punches, okay? No, but really though, being a minister, being in front of people and trying to get them impassioned into like what you're talking about and stuff, and being dramatic, but in ways that are inspiring, that sort of thing.
Wise
So,
point.
yeah.
The president of Ukraine's an actor.
Sorry, what?
The guy who runs
The
Ukraine
president?
is an actor. Prime Minister.
No, he's a
President.
comedian.
Oh, I guess.
Yep.
Was he in a TV show though? I remember.
Yeah, he was in a
I watched
TV
a whole
show.
6-minute documentary.
Oh, really?
Just kidding.
Okay.
No, yeah, he was in a TV show.
Yeah.
And here's the weird
mostly
thing.
comedian.
Here's the weird thing about the president of Ukraine.
Mm.
So he was in a TV show, and the plot of the TV show,
Was
Was
him being
that-
president?
yes,
Yeah,
I heard about that.
his-
Yeah.
Freaking weird,
that
right?
he's this actor that's been elected president of Ukraine, and then he was an actor, and he was actually elected president of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Not telling
And he
you
was
that
the-
isn't
He
meta.
was like supposed to be like a
Right.
badass president in the TV show and everything. Like,
Yeah,
oh, he does it
yeah.
his way. He just says whatever he wants. He's
I
a politician.
know.
Oh, like
Yeah.
that was a
I
show.
know.
That's funny.
Here.
It'd be like
Comedy.
the fucking I can't for the life of me I can't remember the name of the actor, but he got like in trouble for like sexual abuse. But it'd be like the
Which
guy.
one? There's so many.
I know.
Just look through the list.
But he was the guy playing the president in like House of Cards.
Kevin
Oh.
Spacey.
Kevin Spacey, yeah.
Oh,
It'd be
gosh.
like though it'd be like if Kevin Spacey became president. Like, well, it wouldn't be the first time we've had like Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, so
Yeah.
also actors. So yeah.
Good
That's funny as
lord.
hell. Can you imagine Kevin Spacey being president? Pussy for everyone. That'd be his campaign slogan.
You have half of the country.
That's so. But which half?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Which half?
The
What do you
gayer
mean?
half. I mean, like, you know, at the very
That's
least.
your answer to.
He would have straight men, bisexual women, and lesbians.
Yeah,
Yep.
just everyone. Basically, everyone who's
90% of the
closeted
country.
gays. They
Yeah.
just call themselves straight men. No, they want pussy. It's good. You know. No one asked this. So what does carpe diem mean to us? Because they use a repeated phrase right in the movie, and they used it in different ways. Right, there was the dude who Nwanda, who right choked on the bone, and he gave that joke, and then got expelled and shit. Or at least it was one of the factors that got him expelled eventually. And then there was Knox who kissed the girl on her forehead. Thankfully, it wasn't on the lips. I'd be crossing the line for
Oh,
sure.
I know.
But it was on the forehead, I guess. But he was also like really drunk, but also nonetheless very stupid. And then the rest of them standing up on their desks and shit like that, right? So it's all these different ways. So what does carpe diem mean to us?
Based off of the movie or just like
No, based off of the idea itself. Seize the day. What does it mean?
seize the day?
How do we seize the day, or how would we like to seize the day?
Definitely. Stop.
Just
That's a hard question.
We're
Just
gonna
yes.
definitely seize the
I said
day.
how. Like just yes.
Not a
That's
question,
that's not how that
It's a
works.
statement. Definitely don't want to be first. You can think about it for like an hour.
What?
I need to think about this for like an hour.
I get that. No, it's an intense question. Yeah.
Well, it's similar to Memento Mori.
Mhm.
And I say this having had a couple of friends die on me, so, Memento Mori. I like that better, actually.
Yeah, I get that. We've had conversations about death before, in the past meetings. It was only a couple meetings ago, and one of the bigger points that was brought up about death was that because we have death, we are all the more pushed to get done today what can be done, instead of if we were immortal, I can always do that tomorrow, and then we just go on and live that forever. So, but yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, so memento mori is a better phrase, you think? That's interesting.
Seize the day.
I guess for me, it kind of means to think about like how you feel about what your life, what's going on in your life, and where your life is heading.